Emma Carter had always been invisible at Westfield High. With her oversized glasses perched on her nose and her long blonde hair perpetually tied back in a messy bun, she navigated the crowded hallways like a ghost. Her arms were constantly laden with towering stacks of books, classics, mysteries, science fiction, poetry, anything that could transport her away from the harsh reality of high school social dynamics. "Look, it's the human library," sneered Madison Wells, the self-proclaimed queen of senior class, as Emma hurried past her locker. Her entourage of perfectly manicured followers giggled on cue. "Does she ever put those books down? I bet she sleeps with them." Emma's cheeks burned crimson, but she kept walking. She'd learned long ago that responding only made things worse. The comments had started in freshman year and had only intensified over time. Bookworm, nerd, antisocial freak. She'd heard them all whispered in the hallways, shouted across the cafeteria, and even scrawled on her locker in permanent marker. The truth was, Emma loved her books more than anything else in the world. They were her escape, her companions, her teachers. While her classmates were posting selfies and gossiping about who was dating whom, Emma was exploring distant galaxies with Isaac Asimov, solving mysteries with Agatha Christie, and falling in love with the romantic heroes of Jane Austen. Her bedroom was her sanctuary. Walls lined floor to ceiling with bookshelves, a reading nook by the window where she spent countless hours lost in different worlds. Her parents, both professors at the local university, encouraged her love of literature, but worried about her social isolation. "Maybe you should join the drama club," her mother would suggest gently, "or the debate team." But Emma preferred the solitude of the library, where she worked part-time shelving books and helping other students with research projects, the few who weren't afraid to approach her. The bullying reached its peak during lunch periods. Emma would sit alone at a corner table, usually with her nose buried in whatever novel she was currently devouring, while groups of popular students would make loud comments designed for her to overhear. "I wonder if she knows how to talk to actual humans," Tyler Morrison would say, earning laughs from his football teammates. "Maybe she only speaks in book quotes." The worst part wasn't the cruel words. Emma had developed thick skin over the years. It was the loneliness that gnawed at her. She watched other students form friendships, go on dates, make memories that would last a lifetime, while she remained on the periphery, an observer rather than a participant in the grand theater of adolescence. Her teachers adored her. She was the student who actually read the assigned materials, who asked thoughtful questions, who wrote essays that made them remember why they'd chosen education as a career. But peer recognition remained elusive. Even the other academic achievers seemed to view her as too intense, too serious, too different. As prom season approached, Emma watched the excitement build around her like a storm she wasn't invited to. Weather. Girls discussed dress shopping and color coordination with their dates. Boys nervously planned elaborate promposals. The hallways buzzed with anticipation for what everyone considered the most important night of their high school careers. Emma assumed she would spend prom night as she spent most Saturday evenings, curled up with a good book, perhaps starting that new fantasy series she'd been saving. After all, who would want to take the school bookworm to prom? She was invisible, unremarkable, forgettable. She had no idea that everything was about to change. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning, slipped through the vents of Emma's locker like a secret message. She almost missed it entirely, focused as she was on organizing her afternoon's reading material. The cream-colored envelope bore her name in elegant script, and for a moment she wondered if someone had made a mistake. Inside was something she never expected. A prom invitation. But not from any of her classmates. It was from Jake Morrison, Tyler's older brother who had graduated 2 years earlier and was now attending the local community college. She barely knew him, remembered him only as the quiet one who had always seemed different from his boisterous younger sibling. The note inside was simple. "Emma, I know this might seem strange, But I've always admired your intelligence and the way you stay true to yourself. Would you like to go to prom with me? No pressure. Just thought you might enjoy the experience. Jake. Emma stared at the invitation for a full 5 minutes, convinced it was some elaborate prank orchestrated by Madison and her crew. But something about the handwriting, the sincere tone, made her reconsider. She remembered Jake from when he'd been a senior during her sophomore year. He'd been in advanced placement classes, had always been polite when their paths crossed, and had never participated in the casual cruelty that seemed to define high school social interactions. That evening, Emma called the number he'd included in his note. Their conversation was awkward at first, but Jake's genuine kindness gradually put her at ease. He explained that he'd always noticed her, had always been impressed by her dedication to learning and her refusal to conform to what others expected of her. He'd wanted to ask her out during high school but had been too shy, too worried about what his friends would think. "I'm not the same person I was then," he said, "and I think prom could be fun if we went together. What do you say?" After hanging up, Emma stared at herself in her bedroom mirror. Behind her thick-framed glasses, her green eyes were bright with possibility. Her long blonde hair fell past her shoulders in waves when she let it down. She'd always hidden behind loose clothing and minimal makeup, but as she studied her reflection, she began to see potential she'd never acknowledged before. The next day, she did something completely out of character. Instead of heading to the library during lunch, she approached Sophia Chen, a girl from her AP literature class who had always been friendly despite Emma's reputation as a loner. Sophia was part of the artsy crowd, not popular enough to be cruel, but confident enough to be kind. "I need help," Emma said simply. "I'm going to prom, and I have no idea what I'm doing." Sophia's eyes widened with excitement. She'd always suspected there was more to Emma than books and solitude. "Are you kidding? This is going to be amazing!" What followed was the most intensive 2 weeks of Emma's life. Sophia became her fairy, godmother, guiding her through the mysterious worlds of fashion, makeup, and hairstyling. They spent hours shopping, trying on dresses, experimenting with different looks. Emma discovered that she actually enjoyed the process of transformation, the artistry involved in creating a new version of herself. The dress they finally chose was nothing like what anyone would have expected the school bookworm to wear. It was a black leather bodycon mini dress that hugged her curves and made her look sophisticated and edgy. The leather was soft and supple, and the dress hit mid-thigh, showing off legs that had been hidden under loose jeans for years. It was bold, confident, and completely unlike anything Emma had ever worn before. Sophia helped her practice walking in heels, taught her subtle makeup techniques that enhanced her natural features, and showed her how to style her long blonde hair in loose, glamorous waves. As the transformation progressed, Emma began to feel something she'd never experienced before: genuine confidence in her appearance. The night before prom, Emma stood in front of her mirror one final time. The girl looking back at her was still, recognizably Emma Carter, but she was also something more, something new. She was beautiful, confident, and ready to show the world that there had always been more to her than anyone had bothered to notice. She carefully hung the black leather dress in her closet and smiled. Tomorrow night, the invisible girl would finally be seen. The gymnasium of Westfield High had been transformed into an enchanted garden, complete with twinkling lights, flowing fabric, and elaborate floral arrangements. Students who had spent 4 years in these halls were now dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate the end of an era and the beginning of their adult lives. Emma stood at the entrance, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. The black leather bodycon dress clung to her figure like it had been made specifically for her body. Her long blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders in perfect waves, catching the light with each movement. Her makeup was flawless but subtle, enhancing her natural beauty rather than masking it. She'd traded her thick-framed glasses for contact lenses, and her green eyes seemed to sparkle with newfound confidence. Jake stood beside her in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his arm offered gallantly. He couldn't stop staring at his date, amazed by the transformation, but more impressed by the confidence radiating from within her. "You look absolutely stunning," he whispered. As they walked through the entrance, conversations stopped. Heads turned. The girl who had been invisible for 4 years was suddenly the center of attention, and the attention was entirely positive. Emma Carter, the bookworm, the loner, the girl who was always buried in a novel, looked like she had stepped off the pages of a fashion magazine. Madison Wells nearly dropped her purse when she saw Emma. The queen bee of Westfield High was used to being the most beautiful girl in any room, but tonight she felt thoroughly upstaged. Emma's transformation wasn't just physical. There was something in her posture, her smile, her entire presence that commanded respect and admiration. "Is that really Emma Carter?" whispered Ashley Martinez, one of Madison's lieutenants. "She looks like a completely different person." But Emma was still exactly who she had always been, just finally willing to let that person shine. As she and Jake moved through the crowd, she was greeted with compliments and surprised recognition from classmates who had barely acknowledged her existence for 4 years. Tyler Morrison approached them, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by genuine amazement. "Emma? Wow, you look incredible. I mean, really incredible." He paused, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely ashamed. "I owe you an apology. We all do. The way we treated you, it was wrong." Emma smiled graciously. "Thank you for saying that, Tyler. It means a lot." Throughout the evening, Emma discovered that she was actually quite good at social interaction when she wasn't constantly worried about being judged or ridiculed. She danced with Jake, laughed with classmates who were seeing her clearly for the first time, and even engaged in friendly conversation with some of her former tormentors. During a slow song as she swayed in Jake's arms, Emma caught sight of herself in one of the decorative mirrors placed around the gymnasium. The girl looking back at her was confident, beautiful, and radiant with happiness. But more importantly, she was authentic. This wasn't a costume or a disguise. It was simply another facet of who Emma had always been, finally given permission to emerge. "You know what's funny?" she said to Jake as the song ended. "I thought I needed to change to be accepted, but really, I just needed to stop hiding." The crowning moment came when the prom court was announced. Emma had never even considered the possibility, but as the evening progressed, it became clear that her classmates were voting with their hearts rather than their old prejudices. When her name was called as prom queen, the gymnasium erupted in applause. Standing on the stage in her black leather dress, a tiara placed gently on her blonde waves, Emma looked out at the crowd of faces that had once been sources of fear and pain. Now they were smiling, cheering, celebrating her. She thought about all the books that had taught her about transformation, about characters who discovered their inner strength, about the power of staying true to yourself even when the world tries to make you feel small. "Thank you," she said into the microphone, her voice steady and clear. "For 4 years I hid behind my books because I thought that's where I belonged. Tonight I learned that there's room in the world for bookworms who also happen to be queens. Never let anyone tell you that you have to choose between intelligence and beauty, between studying and socializing, between being yourself and being accepted. You can be everything you want to be." As the crowd cheered and camera flashes captured the moment, Emma smiled. She would always love her books, would always value intelligence and learning above shallow pursuits. But she had also learned that confidence, beauty, and social grace weren't betrayals of her intellectual self. They were simply additional chapters in the story of who she was becoming. The invisible bookworm had finally learned to see herself clearly, and in doing so had helped everyone else see her too.